All right, so we just performed a basic introduction to cell size, and you calculated surface area to volume ratios with different cubes. So now what we're going to do is look at how cell size differs between cells and what this means for the cell. So as you can see just by looking at this picture, these are all cells that can be found in the human body. And what you're seeing is pretty much the different sizes of these cells. So cells in your body come in different sizes. So if you compare like pancreatic cells, the beta cells that produce your insulin, and you compare that to adipocytes, which are your fat cells, you can see there's quite a bit of difference. And so why are cells different in size and how does this relate to their function is what we're going to talk about next. So you might be asking yourself, why are cells small? Like, what is the evolutionary advantage of being small? Well, cells are not big because it would require too many resources for them to efficiently do their job. So they would need too much carbon dioxide or too much oxygen in order to perform their basic functions. They also, if they were super big, as you saw in some of the surface area to volume calculations, they couldn't eliminate waste efficiently. So they couldn't remove the waste that builds up inside the cell efficiently. Also, they couldn't be able to either give off heat or take in heat efficiently or quickly. So sometimes cells do need to release heat energy very quickly, especially in the process of metabolism. And so if you're too big, you can't do that efficiently. And then lastly, if you're too big, you can't exchange materials with your environment efficiently. So if you needed to take in glucose and you had a large surface area, it wouldn't be very easy to get those materials into the cell. So something that cells have done, and this is an evolutionary advantage, is they are small, and they're small for a reason. And the reason for that is because smaller cells do have a higher surface area to volume ratio. That means it's way easier for them to take in nutrients that they need, to exchange elements with their environment if they need to eliminate waste, all the things we just mentioned in the last slide. It's actually really easy if you have a high surface area to volume ratio that only comes with being a small cell. So the way you figure out if a cell is efficient at removing materials from its body or efficient in taking in nutrients into the cell, you would calculate what's called the surface area to volume ratio, like we just did in the introduction. So what you do, you simply calculate the surface area of the shape that's given. So most of the times in AP biology, they will give you either a cube or a sphere. Those tend to be the two shapes that are used. Then step 2, you calculate the volume of the shape, and then you just divide the two. Surface area is in the numerator, volume is in the denominator. And as you can tell from the diagram, if you just compare the first picture to the second picture, right, they're both cubes, but cube 1 is smaller than cube 5 there. And when you do the calculations, the surface area to volume ratio calculations, you'll see that being smaller leads to having a higher surface area to volume ratio. And again, that means that that cell can exchange material much more quickly in the environment than cube 5 here. So you might be asking, well, am I going to have to remember all of these surface area and volume equations of the different shapes that are out there? And the answer is no. The AP test will provide an appendix for you of the equations that are needed. So you do not need to memorize them. However, it's always good to have a firm grasp of what they kind of look like. So here's just a sample practice problem for you. What's the surface area to volume ratio of a cylinder with a height of 2 centimeters and a radius of 1 centimeters? So go ahead, try to figure that one out, and we'll discuss it in a sec. So this is the general rule, and if you can remember this, then you have this down. So as cells increase in volume, relative surface area decreases and the demand for internal resources increase, okay? So as cells do get bigger in volume, their surface area actually decreases and they demand more in order to function. Okay, so smaller cells actually need less resources compared to bigger ones. Now, what's really kind of neat is to look at the evolutionary change of some of the cells and how these cells have adapted to maybe get more materials from their environment. So a good example is the intestinal villi that you see right here in the bottom left. These cells have actually kind of folded in on themselves to increase that surface area to volume ratio. And the reason they do that is because, well, if you know in the intestines, that's where you absorb a lot of your nutrients that go into your bloodstream. So it would be extremely helpful for survival to be able to absorb more nutrients to support your body. This also can apply to animals as well. So one of the reasons elephants have large ears and also skin wrinkles is to, again, increase that surface area to volume ratio for primarily cooling so that they can cool their body relatively quickly without much effort. And looking at elephants compared to mice, for example, this applies to small animals as well. So we said small animals are more efficient. They can exchange materials and heat with their energy relatively quickly, but that does cause smaller animals to lose heat very quickly. So what they do to compensate for that is they eat large amounts of food. And when they do that, they can pretty much break down their food, release that heat, and warm their bodies. All right, so that concludes surface area to volume ratio talk. I hope that was good.